Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. I'm really glad to have you all for the first Clarity Booster of the year. And as you know, we're gonna meet each other. We're gonna meet every month at the beginning of the year. It's at the beginning of the month. It's gonna be actually the first Monday of every month, and we're gonna do this together. So I'm gonna go straight into it because the goal for this is to be sharp, is to be impactful, and definitely to fit within 30 minutes. So hopefully I'll keep an eye on people as they come in, but if you are late, you might not come in. That's the thing that I will probably need to say next time. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And I'm going to start today with something that might surprise you. You don't need to get people to respect your boundaries. Most of the discomfort that we feel around boundaries doesn't come from people crossing them. It comes from the fact that we're not backing ourselves up. So, you know that uneasy feeling, the frustration, the resentment, the tension? That's what it feels like when something doesn't feel quite right. And then we override it. Because if you don't have, at the end of the day, if you don't have your own back, who will, right? So boundaries don't start with other people, they start with us. And I actually realized this very clearly watching my daughter the other day. I'll tell you the story very quickly, but she was basically riding a scooter. She was with a bunch of friends. We were going to the pub, and then another child wanted a scooter. And so Harlow, my daughter, said no. No drama, no justification, no guilt, just no. Right? She wasn't being difficult, she wasn't being selfish. She was just stating a boundary. And my partner, Sam, interfered, asking her to lend her scooter and try to, insist quite a bit much. And what was going on there innocently, he wasn't doing it on purpose, but he was trying to override the boundary because he felt a little bit insecure in the moment. Maybe he was a bit worried about, being judged by other parents, or maybe, was just feeling a bit awkward about the situation. But what he innocently did was he was trying to get her to bend her boundaries to make himself feel better. So this is where it's struggling. We are born knowing what feels okay and what doesn't. Boundaries aren't learned, they're part of our wisdom, our self. We don't need to learn boundaries, we somehow along the line unlearn them. We learn to override them, to please, to fit in, to avoid discomfort, ours or other people's. So, how do boundaries actually communicate with us? Well, through feelings, right? Feelings show us the boundaries of our mind in the same way that sensations show us the boundaries of our body. So your pain is going to say stop. Emotional discomfort says pay attention. Every uncomfortable feeling means a boundary has been crossed. But, and this is crucial, it doesn't necessarily mean that boundary still needs to exist. Sometimes the boundary that's been crossed is an old one, an echo from your past. For example, someone makes a comment that wasn't ill intended, right? But you experience it as a bit of an insult. It's not actually what they said, is because what they said triggered an often invisible insecurity that's shaped by past experiences, conditioning, or old emotional wounds. So yes, something was triggered in a moment, but the question becomes, is this me or is this them? And most of the time, it's both. But in order for us to get other people to respect our boundaries, we must first hold up the mirror and take care of the this is me part. And this is where our responsibility starts. So our responsibility is here to understand our experience before acting on it. Because it wouldn't be fair to ask someone else to take responsibility for our past conditioning, old wounds, the meaning our mind has learned to attach to things. That wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be fair. That part is ours. So I'll give you a concrete example so you can picture what I mean by that. I used to have a friend who was constantly late, right? And it really irritated the hell out of me. If I had gone straight from feeling to boundary, I could have said something like that. Your lateness makes me feel disrespected. But notice what happens here. I'm not setting a boundary. I'm blaming her for how I feel. And I'm also handing her responsibility for my sense of respect. My happiness is now in her hands. So instead, I ask myself, is it actually her lateness? Or is it what my mind is making of it? The meaning my brain attached to lateness was disrespect, right? The association didn't come from her, it came from my education, my past experiences, my conditioning, maybe society. But lateness doesn't always mean disrespect. For instance, if she was late because she got a call saying her mother was unwell or at the hospital, that little equation in my head collapses. So you could argue it's lateness without a good reason or a good enough reason, right? That feels disrespectful. But what is good enough? For instance, stopping for groceries might be fine before a dinner party, but not when someone is in crisis. What's a good enough reason is not only contextual, it's subjective. We all have different tolerances that are very personal and unique. Therefore, that rule, that equation, that rule that created in my head isn't a fact, it's a belief, a value. And it's the belief or the value, not the behavior, the situation, the people that creates the feeling. Once I saw that my feeling was coming from my belief, not from her behavior alone, I had two options. The only two options that keep us empowered. Option one, let go. Let go of the belief that is creating the discomfort. If I am the one responsible for my own experience, I am the one responsible for my own happiness and peace of mind. If a belief doesn't serve me, I can let it go. What does it mean to let go? It means I stop asking the situation to be different. It means I adapt. Maybe I bring a book next time I meet her because I know there's a good chance she'll be late. I change my expectations. But if I choose this option, I have to genuinely let go. Not scorekeep, no scorekeeping, no resentment. And this is where people often fall short. They say they let go, but they keep scoring their heads. And this is just self-harm, by the way, unless we can't let it go, because a boundary needs to be set. That's option two. Option two is learn. Learn from the feeling. If once the story is stripped away, we still recognize, we recognize and we own our part in this experience, but something still doesn't feel quite right. That's a boundary that needs to be set. So let's use another example. Imagine that a colleague of yours regularly messages you outside of working hours, right? It upsets you. You realize that the upset comes from a feeling of being taken advantage of. The belief is, or might be, people walk all over me. Is this true always and in every circumstances? Probably not. So you realize this is a belief and not a fact. But you don't want to start ignoring your colleagues and give the wrong impression. So that's where a boundary can be set. Like, for instance, proactively letting your colleague know you don't respond to messages after 6 p.m. Now, what do we do if people don't respect our boundaries? Well, in other words, where does our responsibility stop? So we cannot control whether people respect our boundaries. That is not our job. All we can do is uncover them and express them if and when it's suited. But here's the important part, and this is where people often get it wrong. In reality, it actually almost doesn't matter what other people's response to our boundary setting is. Because the anxiety doesn't come from people not respecting our boundaries. It comes from us not knowing what they are or knowing them and overriding them ourselves. So a few things, I'll explain to you what I mean. A few things happen when we express our boundaries, which basically tells us that we feel in control and makes us take charge of our own experience. So the first thing is expression equals empowerment. The moment you express a boundary, you step out of the victim mindset. You're no longer waiting for someone else to change miraculously. You've expressed how you feel, you've taken control. Number two, boundaries strengthen when expressed. Every time you state a boundary, you strengthen it and you reinforce self-trust in the same way. You teach your nervous system, I can listen to myself, I can take care of myself. That's why confidence grows, not because people behave better, not necessarily, but because you do. And number three, well, the real anxiety comes from self-betrayal, not from people crossing boundaries, but from us crossing our own. Once we stop abandoning ourselves, resentment fades. So if someone continues to cross a boundary, for example, that colleague keeps messaging you outside of working hours, you don't spiral as much. You already know where you stand. You might repeat the boundary. You might distance yourself. Whichever your next step you take, it will come from a place of proactively respecting your own boundaries and making them respected, not as a protective response, and it will feel immensely different. So, you don't need to get people to respect your boundaries. You don't have that power, and frankly, you don't want it. People's ability or inability to respect other people's boundaries isn't and shouldn't be your responsibility. Your only job, your only way into empowerment is to uncover and respect your own boundaries. So this is what the exercise that I created for you and that we're going to do next is going to help you relearn. Because remember, this is something you already know how to do. It's just something you might have been pressing the snooze button on a little bit. So I'm going to put in the chat a little worksheet, which I invite you to do for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to run you through it. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Do this in the chat. Here you go. Morning, Adele. Just a message. There you go. So download this. And I'm going to share so you can see what I do, what I mean. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you. This is what this live masterclass is for me to help you if you need anything. Okay. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen. If someone shouts if you don't, though, let me know. So, daily practice for boundary awareness. This exercise is a way of reinstalling a system that's been muted, like a snoozed alarm. My recommendation is you don't need to do this forever, as always with the things that I give you guys, but my recommendation is to do this every day for a week, just to, especially if your sense of boundary has been a little bit blurry lately. And you do this every time you feel upset or you feel like a boundary might have been crossed, right? Remember, boundaries are instinctive. We're just relearning how to hear them, right? So the first thing is to figure out what the equation is, right? Ask yourself to write what didn't feel okay. What was the feeling? Write the equation your mind created. When X happens, it means Y, right? Everything has a meaning. That's when things have a meaning that we tend to take it personally. So in my example, it was when People, well, at least when that person was late, it might not have been people, but when that person is late, it means I am not respected. It means they don't respect me, right? So this is simply the equation your mind produced. It might sound extreme, exaggerated, or even silly when you see it written down. Don't correct it, don't soften it, don't judge it, just write it as it is. So that's step number one. Step two is figuring out, is it a fact or a belief? Right? For something to be a fact, it has to be true in every situation without exception. For instance, ice is cold. That is universally true. There's no situation, no exception in where that ice isn't cold. When it rains, the ground gets wet. Another fact, right? Beliefs sound like fact, but they aren't, right? Being late is disrespectful. Are there exceptions to this rule? Yes. That means it's a belief, not a fact, right? So here's a couple of questions that you can use. Is this true in all situations without exception? And if not, are there any exception to this rule? What would be the exceptions? Right? If there's even one exception, it's not a fact, it's a belief. I'll give you an example. I was doing this exercise with a client the other day, and he was talking about thinking that when people take food off his plate, that was rude. And I would really, and that would set up an absolute rage within him. Like, because we worked on this, like, what was the meaning behind it? And it was like, but that's a fact. I was like, well, let me propose to you a different scenario. What if the person who takes food from your plate is a starving child? I was like, well, that would be different. I was like, that's not a fact. That is a belief. That is a value. And by the way, our belief and our value, our belief system is very important. We don't want to necessarily override them completely. It doesn't mean that it's because something is a belief, it's we should toss it. Absolutely not. Some of our beliefs are very makes who we are and is important to us. And he learns somehow during his childhood, his education, that it's not polite to take food from other people. And it might be something that he wants to keep doing, and that's okay. But recognizing that something is a belief and not a fact allows you to be more flexible. It allows you to adapt to the situation and to remove any sense of disappointment, any sort of anxiety, of stress that you're creating yourself. That is the goal of this, right? So it really is just to figure out, is this a fact or is this a value? Is this a belief that I'm creating that is creating my experience right now? Learn and let go. Now imagine letting go of that equation completely, right? If I didn't believe this anymore, what would I do or say next? Right? So either you learn, meaning, well, actually, first, you let go of the boundary that doesn't serve you anymore, right? The old boundaries, the one that doesn't allow you to see the situation for what it is right now. It doesn't mean you let go of it forever, but you let go of it for now so that you can see the situation from a more neutral place. Now, once you see that, is there a clear boundary that emerges? Right? That's the learn bit. Often, like I said, it's a bit of both, right? So your reflections here is the rule or the equation I can let go of is, to sum up, and then the boundary I have learned is. And from there, you can decide whether the boundary is worth setting or not. Not every battle is worth having. Okay. So, and I remember the most important thing here is to unveil the boundary. Once that's done, the sense of empowerment, the sense of control is already back on, which is why often we realize we don't necessarily need to go about and set boundaries with everyone. So I'll give you 5 minutes. It's 20 past now. I'll give you until 25 past, and then we'll have 5 minutes for either questions or if someone wants to talk about what they uncovered, you feel free to do that. This is your time. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Right. Anyone has any questions? Amazing. Thank you, Julie. If anyone wants to share anything or has any questions, or feel free, I'm here for you. That's the whole point of this live, that I can help you if you need to. And if not, if you've got if you just don't feel like going live right now, but if you want to put it in the chat, just because it's always nice for others to be a bit inspired. If a boundary has come up for you, and you feel comfortable sharing it, just share it in the chat.
I've got a question. So when you kind of shared, like when you were talking about kind of your own boundaries being crossed and then like reinstating the boundary, sometimes I find that like I think I'm quite good at kind of setting the boundary. This is my boundary. But sometimes when it is crossed, I then go, well, that's because they don't respect me. So my natural instinct isn't to go, okay, well, this is my boundary. It feeds into the, well, it's because I'm, not respected or incapable or whatever it is. So kind of like what, like when like I'm triggering that as a natural response rather than just going, well, look, this is my boundary, kind of and repeating that kind of what do you recommend to do?
Well, that is exactly what we've just done here, right? So what happens is the first thing that you do is you see the world, you see what happens through the lens of the insecurity, of the belief. So your job here is first to recognize your responsibility here. Where is the belief that is being triggered? Knowing that this is a belief, knowing that this is a story, already takes the power away. Does that make sense? Because if it wasn't because, how do you know that they're disrespecting you?
Well, I guess the story that I tell in my head is I've clearly set a boundary and they're not respecting that. So then that's why they're
So
disrespecting me.
again, is it universally true? Does it mean that every time that someone that a boundary has been expressed, if someone doesn't respect it, it means that they disrespect you? Is that true?
No.
There you go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you were to find some exceptions to that, you'd find tons, right? Someone is
Yeah.
just something else on their mind. They don't like. There's so many. I would even ask myself, have I ever done that myself? Have I ever accidentally disrespected other people's boundary, even though I knew somehow, or I've been told somehow that I shouldn't be doing that? So in that moment, it's, if I didn't take this personally, it's basically that if I didn't take it personally, if that equation in my head wasn't true, what else could be true? What would I see there? Could I let it go? Right? So it's the fact from fiction. Does that make sense, Adele? So I think
Yeah.
that the thing that you're encountering right now is exactly this: is that you're still in your belief mindset when you're trying to analyze the situation.
Yeah.
You first owe to realize what's the belief here, what's not actually always true. And once you can let that go, at least for now, you can see what the situation is. You might realize that actually you don't really know what's going on. You don't really like and then this is where you move into curiosity, right? This is when you can ask, why is it that you haven't, I told you this before. What's going on here? Why are you not respecting my boundary? And when I had this with my friends, right? I did express the boundary with her, and several times after that, she didn't quite respect it. But at that point, I kind of knew this wasn't about me anymore. Because when we had that conversation, she explained to me her world. That's what this sort of conversation would trigger, right? It's a meeting of worlds. So then she explained to me that, she's got a bit of ADHD and she was struggling to get focused on something, and every time she's got to leave the house, she's doing 20 different thousand things. She's not thinking about not respecting my boundary in that moment. She's thinking about trying to fix the mess that is in her own head. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, my love. Good. Guys, we've got Well, I was going to say we've got 1 minute. I'm very keen on keeping this sharp and on time because I want you guys to know that you can come in, and if you've got a meeting at 9:35, you can go to your meeting. So thank you so much, my loves, for coming and for joining us today for our first clarity call, clarity booster. Sorry. There will be more. There will be at least once a month and maybe more in the future. We'll see how things go. I'm very keen to know your feedback as well, to know if that was helpful, if you liked it, if you like the format, if you like something different, if you're more visual. You notice I didn't use slides. I want to use slides I want to try not to use slides as much as I possibly can so that I really get your attention, and so that you can listen to this at any point. So hopefully, great. Thank you, Julie. Amazing. And I send you lots of love, and I will share the recordings, the audio, and the exercise sheet. I just realized I sent you one that wasn't the most updated one, so I'll send you a better one with better questions. I wish you guys a wonderful week, and for those I see at 12 p.m. for the group call, I will see you then. I'll send you lots of love. Bye.
Bye.